Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So today is day 3 of the free agency period, I guess. I mean, day 3, if you want to call it, we can call it whatever kind of day we want to call it. Day 3, day 2, day whatever. Today, in 1 hour, we will celebrate the new league year. Happy New Year to everybody, and we will celebrate that new league year. But I want to start on this, and we got some Titans rumors that are out there, and we got some, new names that we've never heard of and things like that. But I want to start right where we left off. We had to check out of this show about, 15 minutes early yesterday because Vandy Baseball's pregame show came on at 5:45. But yesterday, as I was keeping track of the fact that the Houston Texans kept signing guys, trading for guys, signing guys, I kept saying, wait a minute, they've added 15 guys, you've added 5 guys. I'm like, that's not good. But I had wondered, I said to myself, do I save that topic for Wednesday or do I just go ahead and use it, today? And I asked Ian, I said, Ian, do I save it or do I go with it? And Ian was like, let's go with it. So I went with it at 5 o'clock. And then at 5:25, the Texans signed Danielle Hunter. And once that happened, the text line went crazy. After the show was over, Twitter went crazy. And Titan fans are furious with Ran Carthon. I have a pretty good feeling on who's popular and who's not. I can feel the shifts coming. And look, sometimes I know that my opinions are not popular. I know my opinion on Ran Carthon, the fact that I have not been impressed so far. I understand that that's not the popular opinion. But I think Titan fans are starting to change their minds, and I don't know if that's totally fair or not. Now, let's take my opinion out of this for a second, because I've been unimpressed, and I count last year as a year in which Ran Carthon was the general manager and a year in which they gave Aaron Brewer $4.6 million on a second-round tender when they didn't have to do it. But some of you don't. But let's just analyze it from this standpoint. Why are Titans fans mad? I'm going to tell you why Titans fans are mad. Titans fans are mad because since the start of the second half of the season, with Will Levis at quarterback, Kevin Byard with the Eagles, and the hope of the 2023 season gone, the large part of the fan base kept chanting, cap space, cap space, cap space. And that kept growing. And I kept hearing people say, $100 million in cap space, Jared. And I'm like, I don't know where you guys are getting this stuff from. I mean, there's 2 cap websites, and neither one of them say $100 million, but you guys ran with it. And you talked cap. And what that did was that raised expectations. Now, that's not the team's fault, but it becomes the team's fault when the owner says to Mike Keith, fans, we should be excited for the future because we've got cap space, which she did. At that point, the owner is telling you, we're going to be active in free agency. We're going to try to get this football team good. We're not going to try to be bad. And then it grows. Ran and Chad Brinker, they did their podcasts and their interviews, and they tried to say, well, we can't spend it all at one time. We can't this, we can't that. But again, the overarching theme since October around here has been cap space, cap space, cap space. And what are the Titans doing? And then to make it worse, the Houston Texans are out there spending. And what they're doing, not only that, they're signing guys at positions where they already have guys, and then they're trading those guys away. Now, they're giving them away for pennies on the dollar, but again, what they're doing is they're just looking at a position saying, yeah, we think that Danico Autry is a better player than Malik Collins, so let's just sign Danico and trade Malik Collins. And that's what they did. They went out, traded for Joe Mixon. Okay, he's better than Devin Singletary, who they let walk in free agency. It's amazing. And so on one hand, I've got the Titans, again, from the owner, saying, we've got all this cap space. And I've got the Texans, on the other hand, that are spending. And I've got the Titans adding Sadiq Charles. Who the hell is that? You don't know. I don't know. We don't know. I mean, I saw that last night. Ian, what'd you think last night when you saw Sadiq Charles signed by the Titans?
I had to go to Pro Football Reference and see which position he played.
My favorite is I tweeted out, I was like, who is that? And somebody sent me a screenshot of an article that said 7 players that we know are now officially busts after the 2023 season, and the picture beneath it was Sadiq Charles. I'm like, oh, God. And then it's like, well, Jared, he's just a depth piece. And I'm like, well, what are we wasting our time with depth pieces? We don't need depth pieces. Titans need starters. And so, again, coming into this, and what I've learned about the Titans is it's always a moving target. I've learned 2 things about the Titans. Number 1, ownership listens to the fans. It's not good, but it's reality. And number 2, it's always a moving target with the Titans, right? The Titans ended up losing to the Bengals. Ryan Tannehill threw those 3 interceptions. They traded away A.J. Brown. Everything was John Robinson's fault. So then they fired John Robinson. They lost 7 games in a row, and nobody blamed Mike Vrabel. And that included me, by the way. And nobody blamed Vrabel. Then they started losing this year, and it wasn't Rand's fault. It was Vrabel's fault. So they fired him. Well, now the target is going to Rand Carthon. And so Rand Carthon has expectations from his fan base that have been set in large part, again, because his owner said it. He's got an opponent who has proven you can rebuild your team overnight because they did it, and another divisional opponent did it. And they're spending, and he's adding Sadiq Charles. And Titans fans are mad. And the pushback that I have received over the months, every time I've said something that is semi-critical of any front office decision the Titans make, that wasn't there last night. Last night, there were Titan fans that were tweeting me saying, I've turned on Rand, I this, I that. But I have to ask this question. Is it fair? The new league year hasn't even started yet. The new league year hasn't started. Free agency's not over. I mean, they're bringing in Jerome Baker today for a visit, the inside linebacker from Miami. We had him on our Stillman and Company preview free agency thing that we do every year. And I really like Jerome Baker. And I'm a little worried about the injuries, but I really like Jerome Baker. If they sign him, I'll be happy. But free agency's not over. Now, I'm not going to play this game that I've heard about. Well, you know, there's still going to be guys that come available in June and July. And I'm like, that's bull crap. So I'm not interested in that. But there are going to be guys who in 3 days, in 5 days, thought they were going to sign 3-year deals worth $8 million a season, that once they see the money go away, will take a 1-year deal for 3.5 because that's just how the league works. And I could see the Titans taking that approach with some of these guys. So free agency's not over. They could still end up making more signings and bigger moves and better players, and all that's possible. But the reality is this. Titan fans don't have anything to be optimistic about. That's what this goes to. What I've learned about this fan base is if you just give them the allure that they can be hopeful, they'll accept it. Same with Predators fans. Same fan base, basically. Just give me hope. When the Predators said, hey, we're going to run it back with John Hines and David Poile after they got their clocks cleaned by Colorado in the first round of the 2022 season playoffs, I was like, well, I mean, the fans they're not going to buy that. They know they can't win with those two guys. So they're not going to, well, anything can happen. They're not buying that. And when it comes to the Titans, the one thing that the Titan fans believed in when it came to Ran Carthon was that he was going to be given money to spend in free agency. And so far, he's not spending it, and guys are flying off the board. Now, ultimately, this will be judged in September and October and November. But as I've always told people, this is a 4-hour program every day. It is a daily report card. It is the stock market. On Tuesday, you're here. On Wednesday, you're there. And right now, what I have noticed over the last 24 hours is a seismic shift in the belief of this fan base towards its general manager. And Rand said on Chase and Big Joe that, hey, he understands criticism comes and that's just, it is what it is. But I don't know if he understands how negative it can get. And how negative it can get if, again, you're countering Danielle Hunter with Sadiq Charles. So right now, I don't know how you guys feel. And my opinion of Ran Carthon has not changed. You know, a lot of people try to bully me one way or another every time. They hire a defensive coordinator, and everyone's like, what do you think of Rand now, Jared? We hired this defensive coordinator. I'm like, okay. My opinion has always been, Rand's been a lot of talk, and I haven't seen a lot of chalk. And right now, Titan fans, after all that talk, cap space, they're not seeing a lot of chalk. So I don't know. If you're Ran Carthon, do you stick to the plan? Or do you give in to the fact that clearly the fan base is going bonkers? That's his choice. But that is if they do, in fact, have a plan. Which I assume they do. But who knows with this group? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on the program. I did hear Caroline, Willie, and D-Mace as they signed off, and they were like, see, Ozzie Newsome says the cap is real. Now, I didn't hear what Ozzie Newsome said, but, I mean, the best part was Caroline was like, well, can't we say, though, that you can spend, it doesn't cap spending, and you can spend as much money as you want? And they were like, well, yeah. I'm like, that's the point. Of course the money's real. But that's a different discussion for a different day. 615-737-1025. The Titans have been linked to 2 players that would be starters on defense. They have not signed either one of them, but they have been linked to them, and I have differing opinions on both. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, of course, we'll get your phones in like we always do. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Rand is a tremendous person as far as an evaluator and the relationships he has around the league, and we really wanted to allow him to flourish in that role. Rand brings in a lot of good people, and that's something that this organization can be proud of first and foremost. I do know we have the right GM. Rand Carthon's going to do some great things. He and Brian Callahan just kind of getting this team together. There's a lot of excitement around it. Hope is a powerful thing. We're hopeful that the fan base sees that and is excited about what we're doing. This is where Rand Carthon is just masterful. He has these relationships with these players in a way that most of us in the building don't. We're just so aligned, he and I, and Rand talks about that he has this acronym FIT, fast, instinctive, and tough football players, and I love that. I was like, man, I love that. That's kind of an identity of the team that you want to build. Yeah, Rand's a big part of that. Rand's the one that's really connected with those players in a way that probably no one else has in the building.
There you go, Chad Brinker on the podcast. That was around the Super Bowl when they recorded that. It was actually at the Senior Bowl, which was the week before the Super Bowl. And I remember on social media, people were like, you got to listen to the Chad Brinker podcast because, what they're doing with this organization, it's going to be incredible. And so it was the Saturday before I left for Vegas on Sunday for the Super Bowl, and I went on a long walk. Very nice weather outside. And I was like, I'm going to listen to the podcast. And I listened to the podcast, and I kept hearing all that sunshine pumping, and I'm like, give me the chalk. Like, it's all talk here. Give me something. But Titan fans were holding out hope, like, oh, no, Santa will come. Santa will come. And right now, we're getting right there towards midnight, and Santa has not come down the chimney. And the Houston Texans are getting present after present after present, and I feel like Titan fans are starting to turn a little bit. And I shouldn't even say a little bit. I think they're starting to turn a lot. And I think that Sadiq Charles thing last night, when Diana Rossini reported at like 11 o'clock at night that the Titans had signed this Scarbini offensive lineman from the Washington Commanders, who nobody had ever heard of before, and they signed him while the Texans are adding Danielle Hunter. That was a moment that I think this fan base went absolutely crazy. And so we shall see. My opinion has not changed. See, I think the difference is the popular opinion on the hierarchy of the Titans is that, hey, it was of optimism surrounding the front office and building the team and using all that money and everything else. My stance was always pessimism. So I'm watching what's going on, and I am pessimistic, and I continue to be pessimistic. Now, I promised the Titans that I would give Rand another chance, but this is the chance. And I'd really like to have some of those players the Texans have. Phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Again, the Titans, today it was reported, are going to be bringing in Jerome Baker, the former inside linebacker with the Dolphins. He's a green dot guy, and they need one of those because it's not going to be Kenneth Murray. And they're bringing in Justin Simmons from the Broncos. And I will admit, Simmons has a great reputation as far as playmaking is concerned, as one of the best safeties in the league. But apparently, looking at the Pro Football Focus numbers, Simmons has not been that guy for the last 3 years. So we'll keep that in mind. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kyle is going to kick us off today. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Kyle?
Hey, Jared. I got a question for you, but before we get to that, Charles, he played left tackle for LSU back in Joe Burrow's big year right next to Cushenberry because Cushenberry was a guard back in college. So they know each other. Hopefully they can get the best. Anyways, whatever. How do we
I feel the same way. Like at the end, you're like, anyways, whatever. I hear you on that. Continue.
It's a good fairy tale, but if it doesn't work, who cares? But how do we decipher how much is Rand's fault versus Amy? Because if I'm Rand, I'm spending her money, but, it always has to go through her. So, how do we decipher us little fans? Because I want to get mad at Rand, but it's like, if his hands are tied, man.
Well, so I think there's really something here at play, and I appreciate your call, Kyle. I think that is a very good question. Like, how much of the lack of spending is because of the owner, and how much of the lack of spending is because of the general manager? And I could make an argument that it could be either. And I truly, waffle with this. And somebody told me today, they said, we need a general manager who takes action, Jared. We don't need a general manager who has to go to the owner and ask for everything. I'm like, every general manager has to talk to the owner about everything. That's how all these sports work. It's like when the Titans had their restructure, I was talking to the Predators because I wanted to see, they've had a little minor restructure. Sean Henry's gotten kicked up to just CEO and Michelle Kennedy's gotten kicked up to president. And Barry is the general manager. He's not the president of hockey operations, which David Boyle was. And so I was talking to the Predators about, the difference in the structure and everything else. And they said to me, well, ultimately, at the end of the day, when it comes to all of these positions, the owner's in charge. And I'm like, well, no, duh. Like, of course the owner's in charge. You want to fire the coach? The owner's in charge. You want to fire the general manager? The owner's in charge. That being said, there is something about the Titans that I have seen the last 2 years, which is we're smarter than everybody else. Just trust us. We went to business school at Kellogg, and we've got the analytic models that cure cancer that's helping us build our football team. You watch. We know better than you. And I thought they might have learned their lesson after they tried that last year with Andre Dillard. And I'm not sure if that's the case. The other thing that Rand doesn't do a good job of is Rand doesn't do a good job of taking ownership, of making decisions. Even if the owner is pulling the strings, which again, in a lot of organizations, the owner is heavily involved, Rand does not get out in front of problems. He never has. I was thinking about this yesterday. Barry Trotz, who's going to be on this show at 5 o'clock today, if this were the Predators, Barry Trotz would have done like 6 interviews by now in which he would have walked everybody through the thought process. With Rand Carthon, it's like you have to file a subpoena in order to get him to talk to the media. It's like I've met my quota of once every 4 months, and that is not talking to the press, that's talking to the fans. And so the fans don't have an idea of where any of this is headed. But I can't answer your question as how much is the owner, how much is Rand. I know this. When things don't go well, especially in this organization, somebody always gets fired. And if I had to guess who's going to get fired between the owner or the general manager, Ian, would you like to take a guess which one is most likely to get fired?
Yeah, probably not the owner.
It ain't going to be the owner. I mean, I'll just tell you that right now. Adam in Portland is up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Adam?
Yeah, so they're tied to a lot of trade rumors as well. I know you get the same feeds I do. So, and yours are probably actually more accurate.
Well, I've heard the L'Jarius Sneed rumor, but I haven't heard any of the other massive trade rumors.
Well, you'll see you'll see a lot of things as far as Higgins and Justin Jefferson, whatever, some of these bigger names. But what I will say is that they've already said they're going to spend money. And when you're so depleted, you can't necessarily go and get the flashiest names. You're going to have to spread it out. And now the only thing, and I was telling Ian, that really makes me sick is that they didn't make Danico Autry a contract offer. I don't know if they did, but obviously they didn't, because you would have brought him back for a couple of years for the contract that he had. He was a great player. He was just as important, if not more important, than Jeffrey Simmons last year on that defensive line. So especially when everything else is depleted, you want at least one position group to kind of be shored up.
But did their analytic model say that, Adam?
Do you not think that line would have been so much better with Danico Autry?
I took one math class in college, and I barely passed it. I feel differently than the analytic models probably say. I mean, I think Autry's a good player. What I would have tried to do, Adam, thank you for your call. What I would have tried to do is I would have tried to re-sign Autry before the start of the season. In fact, I asked Rand at one of those court-ordered press conferences that he did before the start of the season, the NFL makes every general manager do, and I asked him if they had been having any talks with any potential free agents, and he said no. And the guy I was talking about there was Autry. Like, that's the guy I was asking about. So I would have thought to do that, but I don't think the analytic models necessarily like a 34-year-old And they probably say, well, he's going to decline in play. And that goes back to the owner versus the general manager and the power structure in the organization. And how much of that is, well, the analytic models say he's going to slow down. And so he's only worth $5.3 million, and the Texans are going to pay him $10 million. And so now you're stuck with TK McClendon out there. And that, I mean, again, those are questions for them, not for me. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. We'll get back into your phones here on, again, the day 3 of free agency. And there was one thing that I do think. I've been thinking about this the whole time, about what the Titans' budget might actually be. And I think they might have given it away a little bit. I think I might have an idea. We'll get to that coming up. But coming up next, there is one thing before we get to your phones that I absolutely positively demand, as we are 30 minutes away from the new league year. And it better happen by the time we're off the air today, or we're going to have problems. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company. Hey, be sure to join us this Friday out at Pinewood Social. That's right. Join us and Guinness for Pinewood Madness Patio SEC Watch Party. We'll be live from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and you can stop by for your chance to enter to win tickets to see Green Day. Showcase your skills in Pinewood Social's arcade basketball game competition, win tournament tickets, and watch all the televised games on their jumbo LED screen. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com/events.
expecting Andre Dillard to be part of the guys that get an opportunity under Callahan?
Well, again, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Just again staying consistent about keeping family business in house. It's documented Dre didn't play as well as he probably would have wanted or the way we wanted. But nonetheless, he's still a talented guy that has some physical traits that you can't find.
Hey, that was Rand Carthon at the Combine, and I don't have a problem with Rand saying what's politically correct or incorrect or whatever it may be as far as Andre Dillard is concerned. What I am starting to get worried about as we approach the new league year is the possibility, the premise that Andre Dillard might be on this football team next year. Because if Andre Dillard is on this football team, that means there's a chance that he might play this upcoming season. And I am not interested in watching Andre Dillard play another snap for the Tennessee Titans. Now, Sam Phelan from A to Z put out there earlier today, he's got a $3 million bonus that kicks in on Monday. So he absolutely is going to be off the team by Monday, I think. But I don't understand why he's not off the team now. I mean, let him go out into free agency and see if somebody will give him a deal. What are they waiting for? And the more he's on this roster, the longer he's on this roster, the more there is a possibility that they actually think he doesn't suck. And I just can't live with that. He is a softie. He is terrible. He was terrible the second he showed up, and Vrabel denied it. And then he was terrible in training camp. He was terrible in the games. Finally, Vrabel couldn't deny it anymore. They put Jalen Duncan out there, who was also terrible. And Vrabel got blamed for Andre Dillard. But if Rand Carthon doesn't cut him, then I don't think it's Vrabel that's the one responsible for Andre Dillard. So, I demand that they get his ass off this team by the end of business today. We do not need to go into the new year with Andre Dillard on the team. The other thing, there was a trade today where the Ravens traded their starting right tackle Morgan Moses to the Jets. And it was a swap of fourth-round picks, and they got Morgan Moses in return. Now, I have always liked Morgan Moses.
He was one of your free agent targets.
He was 3 years ago. I was willing to offer him 3 years, $25 million. He ended up signing for $15 million, and I think he started every game for the Ravens over the last 3 years or however long it's been. And so the Ravens just gave him away to the Jets. And the reason they gave him away to the Jets is because there are a lot of good teams who need help at tackle. Kansas City does not have a left tackle. Cincinnati does not have a right tackle. And so I think Baltimore figured, we'll send him to the Jets. We're not going to get anything out of it, but we'll send him to the Jets, and then that way Kansas City can't just sign him. And now we've given Kansas City a tackle. Now we've given Cincinnati a tackle. Well, where was relationship ran in on that one? You had a better fourth-round pick than the Jets. You've got more quote-unquote cap space than the Jets. Where were you? You need a right tackle. Did they not call you? Do you not think you need a right tackle? What are we doing here? So that one really pissed me off today. 615-737-1025. Let's go to your phones here on the program. 615-737-1025. One texter says, Jared, maybe it's just me, but Bill Callahan is the offensive line coach. And I would imagine that he sees something in Sadiq Charles that is good, and maybe he can train him to be a good offensive lineman. I trust his trained eye way more than I trust yours. Let me say this. A lot of people are starting to make Bill Callahan out to be the second coming of Jesus. And while that might be the case, I highly doubt it. This idea that we can give Bill Callahan bad players and he can make them good players, I think is a little overblown. I think what the goal should be is to give Bill Callahan good players and let him make them great players. That's what I think the goal should be. And I think Lloyd Cushenberry is a good example of that. Joe Alt, if they're able to draft him, will be an example of that. But Sadiq Charles is terrible. From what I have read about Sadiq Charles, whom I found out existed last night at like 11 o'clock. And honestly, when it comes to the Sadiq Charles thing, like, what are you wasting your time on day 2 of free agency with Sadiq Charles? What are we doing? One texter said, when is Rand's next press conference? My guess would be, I think the draft is like the 27th. So my guess would be Rand's next press conference will be April 21st. Somewhere around there, he'll have that press conference that is mandated by the league. That's the only time he talks, is when he has to. And so he'll have one of those mandated by the league press conferences, and that'll be the next time you hear from him. But in fairness to him, free agency will have already been, for the most part, hashed out. Now, if he gets up there and there are still holes, because right now I've got left tackle, right guard, right tackle, wide receiver, defensive end, defensive tackle, inside backer, corner, safety, and kicker. If there are still holes by then, and he starts playing we're going to wait until June and July to get those figured out, we're going to have problems. I'm just telling you right now. But that, we'll see. One texter says, question for Jared. My boss always says, and to keep this in mind, if a customer is looking to buy and they stumble upon your website or store for the first time in their life, what are we doing and what are we saying to make sure the customer turns into a customer for life? With that in mind, if you put your owner hat on for the Titans, how do you sell the Titans to a new NFL fan to turn them into a Titan fan for life in the current situation? And I'm curious on your thoughts on the upside of the franchise in the current state. Dude, let me tell you something. I've been a Titan fan now for 26 years, or however long it's been. Being a Titans fan is a miserable existence. I don't wish this on anybody. And I used to joke all the time that if I ever had kids, I would tell my kids, don't root for the Titans. I would root for somebody else, please. Because Dad and Grandpa have been through the ringer with this football team. Now, I always say that jokingly, but how do you sell the Titans to the rest of the world? Mike Keith asked Amy how to, what was her message to the fans? And she basically said, Will Levis, cap space, and Rand Carthon. And so I just want you guys to know, nobody cares about anybody else's cap space because everybody knows cap's fake. Secondly, nobody cares about Rand Carthon, and he was very unimpressive that first year. And then on the Levis front, as soon as Amy said that, you had people around the league that were coming out saying, I'm not convinced that Will Levis is the guy. So, they're a really good question to ask, but it's hard for me to answer. Chris Sanders joins us next, 615-737-1025. I guarantee you he tells us to calm down on the free agency front. We shall see if he is going to say that or not. I bet he does. We'll do that coming into Ian. Don't tell him that we said that. I want to see if he ends up saying that on his own. Window Nation. Let's talk about those cracked windows. Let's talk about replacing them. You go online to windownation.com. March is a critical time to check your home's windows, because if your windows are cracked, and with the constant change in temperature, that is when you start to see windows that need to be replaced. If they're cracked or leaking and they won't stay open or they won't open at all, it's time to call the pros at Window Nation. Right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows for free. Plus, 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. With proven quality and service, it's no wonder that thousands have trusted Window Nation, including me. I had Window Nation out to my home. I told them, take a look at the windows, tell me what you think. They went around the house. They came back and said, you've got great windows. You don't need a replacement. And they will do the same for you. And again, you get a free in-home estimate with them. So again, that's every 2 windows you buy, you'll get 2 windows for free, 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. Be sure to tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight as Vanderbilt men's basketball takes on Arkansas in the SEC men's basketball tournament at Bridgestone Arena. Pre-games at 5:30, tip-off is at 6. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Ian, will this be the last game of the Jerry Stackhouse era?
Good question. Probably not, though.
Ooh, if it's not, that's good. Ooh, people are going to be mad about that. Also, tune in to 102.5, 106 through the game for updates of the SEC men's basketball tournament this week, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, Toyota, and Guinness. So the Titans came out the gates hot in free agency, signed a center. Good. Signed a running back. Okay. You know, I'm fine with Tony Pollard. He's a starter. It works. Whatever. He and Spears, that should be fine. They signed Chidobe Awuzie. Not bad. And then since then, they signed a linebacker that Pro Football Focus ranked as the 213th best free agent. And then they signed a guy last night who I've never heard of. Meanwhile, the Houston Texans are adding Danico Autry, Joe Mixon, Danielle Hunter. Good players. With that, Christopher Dwayne Sanders joins us on the program, former Titans receiver.
What?
Chris, your thoughts on the
What's up,
Titans in free agency? I think Titan fans are furious. Should they be?
I mean, it's okay. I mean, I know it's kind of hair scratching with Tony Pollard. I know he's a great player. Dallas had 1,300 yards. But the one thing that I like that they did is they improved the center position. I know everybody's like, well, why would you go get him? But I just think that if you look
Chris, I don't think anybody's wondering that.
I'm just, I mean, at the gym, I know this is kind of weird, but I was at the gym and they was asking me why they go get a center. I had to explain to them why it was so important, because if you look at Brewer last year, and I want to be careful when I say this. I'm not being disrespectful when I say this, but it is an upgrade. You know, I mean, it's just Brewer's a smaller guy when he's 6 feet 274, and then you got Cushenberry that's 6'4", 315. He gave a 1 sack and 14 pressures. That's it. So if you look at the center position, you address that and upgrade. I think in that position, I think the Tennessee Titans did okay.
The problem is that they haven't done more of that. Like, I agree with you. Cushenberry and Awuzie, those are good. Who's out there? Look at the Texans. They're signing everybody.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Whew, that's a scary team. Woo.
So, and that's why Titan fans are mad. I shouldn't say that's why. That's why I'm mad. And I think a lot of people were mad about this too. Because over the last week, the Texans have signed Dalton Schultz, Danico Autry, Joe Mixon, Tommy Townsend, Noah Brown, Kayemi Fairbairn, Azeez Al-Shaair, Jeff Okudah, Delshon Phillips, Lonnie Johnson Jr., Mike Ford, Foley Fatukasi, Khalil Davis, Chris Ford, and yesterday, $48 million for Danielle Hunter. And last night you signed Sadiq Charles, whoever the hell that is.
I don't even know who that is.
Do you think Titan fans should be mad about that?
No, I don't think so, because I think they're going to address a lot of the positions in the draft. And I don't only have, how many picks they have? 6 picks?
They have, I think, remember. 5 picks, but they have 2 picks in the top 100, which is bad.
Okay. So they got 7 picks, and I think they need to address the wide receiver position. I don't know what the situation was with Burks. I haven't given up on Burks, but you still got to get a fast receiver at that position. Then also, we always talk about the offensive line. We don't want to have the same thing that we keep repeating each and every year. We need a left tackle, so they have to address that also. And then in the secondary, I know they got Awuzie, which is a great shutdown corner, but you still need some safeties and you still need some corners to help in the back end.
So I will agree with you that I think the Titans are going to use the 7th and 38th picks, 7 at left tackle, 38 at wide receiver. So as far as a need is concerned, I think that takes care of that. On the receiver position front, I still think they could be active in free agency. I hear a lot of names. People will say Calvin Ridley or Hollywood Brown or Tyler Boyd or Curtis Samuel. My thing is those are 2 totally different types of receivers. And Ridley and Brown are deep threats. Boyd and Samuel are slot guys that are consistent. What type of receiver, before we get to the individual receiver that you want, what type of receiver, knowing that all those guys at the combine were running 4.39 and 4.8? I mean, what do you think they should look for? Should they look for the speed guy outside or the slot guy inside?
You need a speed guy. I mean, if you look at the Tennessee Titans roster last year, what guy scared you on the Tennessee Titans at receiver? I know Hop, but other than that, who scared you?
But you don't think that they can draft the speed guy at 38?
I think they can. I mean, I think they can, but it all depends on who's going to be there. And the guy that I love, he might not be as fast, but still an A.J. Brownish, is I like Leggett from South Carolina, because here's the deal. This is the reason why I love him is he's versatile. When I say versatile, he can play on the outside at X, he can play inside in the slot at H, or he can actually play the Z and move him around, because he's a guy in the slot where he can run the choice routes, he can run the corner routes, he can run the seam routes, he can do all those things. But then on the outside, he can run those deep cutbacks, he can run those posts to take the top off the defense. I'm not saying he's A.J. Brown, but he's A.J. Brown-ish. So if he's sitting there at 38, I think they run up to the podium and actually go get him, because he is a freaking beast.
So, again, this is the problem, though, right? So you're like, okay,
Yeah.
They got to, if it's between slot or speed, you say they have to get speed. So let's say they sign Calvin Ridley. Well, now you draft Xavier Leggett. Well, you got too many guys. You got too many outside receivers, and you don't have the slot.
But you got to remember, Kyle Phillips. You still got
No.
You still got Kyle. Hey,
No. We are done with the crappy players that have never done anything. We're done with them. We're not counting on them. They're going to put Nicholas Petit-Frere at right tackle, and I'm going to go crazy every week when they do that. What you're suggesting is what got Mike Vrabel fired. Because they wanted to go into the year with Monty Rice at linebacker. They wanted to go into the year with Aaron Brewer at center. They wanted to go in the year last year in 2022 with Radence at right tackle. And it never works, so we're not doing it. We're getting real players. So, I mean, if you want to sign your outside guy in Ridley, that's fine. If you're Hollywood Brown, whatever. But then I can't. I don't need to draft the speed guy at 38 because I need a slot receiver. I've already got 3 outside receivers.
Okay, let's say, is Tyler Boyd still available? Say a guy like Tyler Boyd that can play
he's a
inside
slot.
out. He's not just a slot guy.
He is just a slot.
But he still can make plays on the perimeter. See, when we talk about a speed guy, it's not just, he can just run a 9 route and go. He's still got to be versatile to run the deep comebacks, the deep overs. It's not just running posts and comebacks. So you got to understand that, you get a speed guy, you need a slot guy, but if you get one guy that can do both of them, it just made your team better as opposed to trying to keep 2 players.
So Tyler
what
Boyd,
you want to do?
Tyler Boyd took 85% of his snaps last year in the slot.
Okay.
He's a slot.
That doesn't mean it don't mean he's just a slot player. You got Jamar Chase. They can play actually both.
Right, and both guys got hurt.
Inside.
Both guys got hurt, and he's still 85% of his snaps were in the slot.
Yes, but he's still an outside guy that can still make some plays on the outside.
He's not an outside. They only had 5 deep targets last year, Chris.
It's not. Listen, when you have a slot guy, it's not that he just catches choice routes and get a first down. I mean, you still got to have a certain amount of speed and a certain amount of creativity to get open. So on the outside, you still, how can I say this? When you're a speed guy, it doesn't mean you're just strictly an X or a Z. You can still play in the slot. There's times where I was in the slot and I was a number 2 wide receiver. Just because I'm a speed guy doesn't mean I just stay outside, Jared.
Chris Sanders is with us on the program. The Titans are bringing in Chase Young for a visit. Chase Young, when he was when he was out there coming out of the draft, everybody thought he was like Lawrence Taylor. He goes to Washington, has a good first year, he gets hurt. Then the effort and coachability questions followed him. Then he goes to San Francisco, lollygags on a touchdown in the NFC title game. Now, in fairness to him, he said at the Super Bowl that, hey, my effort has to be better. That we have to do better. I have to do better. Chris, there's not a lot of leaders on this team, especially with Derrick Henry leaving. Do you think that you can take a chance on a guy with character issues who's got an immense amount of talent in Chase Young?
Yeah, but see, the thing about it is, I mean, you're right, there's not a lot of veterans because a lot of veterans has gone. But at the end of the day, sometimes you need a fresh start. And I understand he made some mistakes about Loaf and whatever, but maybe this is a chance where he can restart his career. But at the end of the day, you got to make sure that this guy fits in the locker room. You got to make sure that he fits, the identity of what you're playing. Because if you bring a guy in with the great talent, that can do some great things, some of the time, I want guys that are going to do great things all of the time. So it goes back to the defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson, that they just brought from Baltimore Ravens. I can't remember. They brought him as the defensive coordinator, and he's got to make sure that the guys that he's bringing in are guys that are going to be full speed every play. And if Chase is not that guy and he can't do that, then you got to find a different guy to come in to actually play that position.
It sounds like since they're bringing him in for a visit, you would want to go through the visit with him before making a determination.
I mean, because you still want to hear a person's heart. I mean, if you look at the situation, everybody, I think it was in 2001 when Kevin Carter came in. Everybody was knocking him, saying, "Oh, he's a guy who lows, he's a guy who's this," because one person took it out of context. So now he comes to the Tennessee Titans, and I had the privilege to practice with him. This guy worked hard. He was a great locker room guy. So maybe it's just a change of environment that maybe change your attitude. So maybe if Chase Young comes in here and he says, "You know what, I'm going to start off right. I'm going to make plays. I'm going to be a locker room guy. I'm going to make sure I hustle on every play," then maybe we'll get the best as opposed to just playing with his potential.
Chris Sanders, great stuff as always. Love you, brother.
Love you, bro. Appreciate you, man. Bye-bye.
Yep. Chris Sanders joining us on the program. And the reputation on Chase Young is he's a bad guy. You know, that he's doesn't have the effort. He's not coachable. And I'd be careful with that. Okay, we do this every year as we start the new league year. Give me the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 5. I messed that up. 4, 3, 2. Happy New Year! Happy New Year, everybody. It is the new league year. Find somebody to kiss right now. And that horrible 2023 with all the Vrabel-Rand Carthon drama is behind us. And now we hope for a decent 2024. Stillman and Company, we continue. Oh, I've been hearing a lot of talk about free agency, and I just hear people throwing out narratives that just aren't true at all. We'll discuss next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Barry Trotz, by the way, will join us at 5 o'clock today ahead of the Predators game tonight at Winnipeg. Happy new league year to everybody out there who celebrates. By the way, the Chargers, did you see what they did? Everyone was talking about the Chargers cap and how they were going to have to trade Joey Bosa and get rid of Keenan Allen and get rid of Khalil Mack, and they released Mike Williams. The Mike Williams, who's played 19 games over the last 2 years, was standing to make $20 million and had 19 catches last season. Yeah. Boy, I tell you, this league, it's amazing. You can't do that in hockey and baseball and basketball. You sign it, you got to pay it. Football, it's like, we don't like it anymore. Cut. Amazing. Okay. So I want to start with this. I have been hearing a lot of narratives that have been coming out, regardless of whether or not the Titans have a master plan up their sleeve, and they might. It might be Jerome Baker, and it might be L'Jarius Sneed on a trade. It might be Justin Simmons. It might be Curtis Samuel. It might be a trade of a guy that we don't even know about, that we're not even thinking. But as of right now, the Titans have not done enough in free agency. They still have holes at left tackle, right guard, right tackle, although Trevor was iffy about right tackle, thinking that PT could play there. I don't know about that. Wide receiver, defensive end, defensive tackle, inside linebacker, corner safety, and kicker. Those are a lot of holes. And we've seen the Texans, and they're loading up. And so now, because of this, Titan fans are impatient. And I don't have a problem with you being impatient. You should be impatient. You were told by your owner, we've got all this cap space. They need to go spend. But I've been hearing a lot of narratives that have been, at least on some level or another, that have been defensive of the Titans' approach to free agency. And so I'm just going to tell you what the myths are. Now, I will tell you right now, free agency is not over. There are still players out there to be signed. And so they can sign a safety. There are still safeties. They can sign an inside backer. There's still defensive linemen. Eric Armstead, DJ Reader, like there are still guys out there to sign. But I want to just kind of squash the narratives that only make you feel comfortable right now, but aren't reflective of reality in the NFL. So let's start at the top.
Number 1.
We're not winning the Super Bowl this year, Jared, so why bother spending big in free agency? You know, the Texans are spending big in free agency, but everybody says they were in the divisional round of the playoffs last year. Yeah? Well, the year before that, they were picking second overall. And the season may not be about winning the Super Bowl, because I don't think the Titans are going to win the Super Bowl this year. But it is about the development of the young quarterback. That is what 2024 is. And winning is a quarterback stat. You want confidence in your young quarterback? Go win games. That's how it works. Even Blake Bortles had people believing in him because they won some games and he couldn't throw. So, again, you can say, well, we need to wait, Jared, because, we're not Super Bowl. Vegas doesn't think we've got the best odds. It doesn't matter. It's about developing the quarterback. It's about the quarterback staying healthy, which if you don't have a tackle, which right now you don't, he won't. And you know that as well as I know that. The quarterback needs confidence. How does the quarterback get confidence? By winning ball games, by completing passes to receivers who can catch them, and having a defense that, again, can take the pressure off of the young quarterback. And also, there is no such thing as a lost season in the NFL. It just doesn't exist.
Number 2.
We need to save, Jared. We need to save our money for when we're good. How do you get good if you don't spend any money? So you want to wait until it's time to pay the quarterback $50 million a year, and then you want to spend money? That's not how this works. The Philadelphia Eagles spent money before Jalen Hurts became their guy. They weren't Super Bowl contenders. They were going out and trying to trade for Russell Wilson the year that Jalen Hurts took off and that they ended up in the Super Bowl. But what'd they do? Oh, they went out and got A.J. Brown. They pay in Philadelphia. The Texans last year paid to support C.J. Stroud. So when you tell me, we got to save our money so that we can use it when we're good, that's not how this works. The way it works in the NFL is once you pay the quarterback $50 million a year, all of a sudden you have to take some of the luxuries away in order to fit it within the budget, which is not the cap, but it is the cash budget. You're going to have to take some luxuries away. You can't have 5 receivers that all make $10 million. But when you don't have the quarterback making a boatload of money, and you don't, then you can spend on getting him receivers, an offensive line, a defense. You get him things that help him get good. You don't wait for that. You don't wait until the quarterback gets good before you start spending the money. There's one team in the NFL that I have seen do that. It's the Bengals, and they had Joe Burrow, and you don't have Joe Burrow. And even then, before that 2021 season, where the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, they went into free agency and they signed the top pass rusher on the market, Trey Hendrickson. I'd say that worked out. They signed Chidobe Awuzie to play corner. I'd say that worked out. They signed Von Bell to play safety. I would say, again, that worked out. They signed DJ Reader from the Texans. That's worked out. So it wasn't like the Bengals didn't go out and get players. But even them, the cheap Bengals, they still had to spend a little bit of money.
Number 3.
We can't rebuild it overnight. Really? Who won the division last year? The team that was picking second in the draft. Who won the division the year before? The team that was picking first in the draft. That's how this league works. It is a league of parity. And again, you won 7 ball games last year, right? The team sucked. The offensive line's the worst offensive line we've ever seen. And you won 7 ball games. And 7 other ball games were 1-score games. So let me ask you this question. If you had an offensive line, how much better would your season have been last year? So you can do that overnight. Stop telling me you can't. Because every year we see a Jacksonville. That Jacksonville team with Urban Meyer on it, that team was terrible. And Trevor Lawrence, people wondered if he was a bust. And they went into a draft in 2022 which didn't have great players at the top of it, or at least they didn't think had great players when they drafted Travon Walker. And they still made it to the divisional round of the playoffs. The 2015 Titans were the worst team Floyd said he's ever seen, talent-wise. And in 2016, after John Robinson acquired DeMarco Murray and Ben Jones and who are some of the other guys he went out and acquired? Rashard Matthews and so on and so forth, drafted Jack Conklin, they were on the doorstep of the playoffs. You can rebuild overnight.
Number 4.
We're not 1 or 2 players away, Jared. Really? Let's put Joe Burrow on the Titans, see what happens. You are 1 or 2 players away. You're 1 or 2 great players away. That's how this league works. Remember how everybody killed Jacksonville for the Christian Kirk contract. The last 2 years, Christian Kirk's been their best receiver. And it propelled them into the divisional round of the playoffs. Everybody has good players, including you. Jeffrey Simmons is a good player. Roger McCreary is a good player. DeAndre Hopkins is a good player, and Tajay Spears is a good player. And I would argue that Lloyd Cushenberry is a good player, and Tony Pollard is a good player. Everybody has some good players. You won 7 ball games last year. What if you had Trent Williams at left tackle? Do you think you'd win 3 more? So don't tell me you're not 1 or 2 players away.
Number 5.
We don't have to spend the money. I mean, I guess you don't have to, but what benefit do you get out of that? There are not awards for most cap space available during the season, as Rand Carthon was bragging about at the Combine. That doesn't exist, okay? So what's the point of having money and saying, we've got cap space, and then saying, oh, no, I don't think we want that player. Let's just go ahead and, like Chris Sanders wants to put Kyle Phillips back out there. Why? Why? He's been 2 years, he hadn't done anything. And you want to rely on him? Why? So we're not doing that. So this idea of, oh, we don't have to spend it, that's fine, but you'll lose. And that we don't have to spend it, that's how you end up with Jack Gibbons starting at middle linebacker last year. That's why you lost. That's how you end up with a revolving door at both tackle spots. Because, well, we don't need to get a real tackle. And this year, you do have the money, supposedly, even though last year you could have spent it too, and everybody knows that. And then that takes us to our final myth.
Number 6.
I've heard this a lot. I heard it coming out of Derek's mouth a lot today. It drove me crazy. There are going to be guys that come available on June 1st. There's going to be another wave of free agency. There are going to be more guys out there. No. This is free agency. Now, there will be some guys. There are different waves of free agency in March and then a little bit in April. There will be guys that come available similar to how Joe Mixon came available, right? Cincinnati decided they could get Zach Moss for cheaper, and then they didn't want Joe Mixon anymore. That will happen. And that will happen over the next week or two. And there will be a couple of guys out there. But as we get closer to the draft, the guys that thought they were going to sign for contracts that didn't sign for contracts, those guys are going to be available, and they're going to lower their asking price and lower their demands to one-year deals, and that's how you can end up signing guys like Chris Moore last season. But that's it. The idea that there's going to be another DeAndre Hopkins just sitting out there for you to take, that's not how this works. You build your team in March. That's what the Texans did last year. That's what the Jags did the year before that. Talk about, we'll wait till July. Ridiculous. 615-737-1025. We'll throw your phones in there. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in on the program. So the Titans have been linked to two potential free agents, one of which is coming in for a visit, another one of which, are we sure they're in on? We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman & Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there to tune into 93.3 Classic Hits tonight as MTSU basketball takes on Louisiana Tech in the Conference USA Men's Basketball Tournament. Pregame at 7:30, tip-off at 8. Coverage also available on the 93.3 Classic Hits app and at 933classichits.com.
I like Justin Simmons, and I understand he's gotten older. He's 30, and he's probably not quite as good. He's not as good as he was at his peak, but that's fine. And I think he's better than the guy they were waiting on, Gardner Johnson, who went back to Philly, right? So they were eager for him. And look, he's a real tone setter, Gardner Johnson. But and they're different styles of player. But I like Justin Simmons. There are some talented safeties out there to sort through, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of a like once the next one goes, that it sets off a little bit of a run. I also think Quandre Diggs, who was released by Seattle and is still a pretty good player, would be a guy that could help. So those would be the two safeties I would like to see them land, and they're certainly in it for Justin Simmons.
So that was PK this morning, and there was a report that came out from Diana Rossini last night when the Titans didn't sign C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And the report from Diana was that they were targeting Justin Simmons after they lost out on C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Which, by the way, I thought Rand Carthon was the best relationship guy in the league. So how did you lose out on C.J. Gardner-Johnson when your GM is the best relationship guy? I don't know. But first thought on that is, what do we make of that report? It's one thing when an insider says the Titans are closing in on a deal with Jared Stillman. Like, okay, we know they're in on it. They're on their way. Like, there you go. Targeting? What exactly does that mean? Does that mean the Titans are actually like, where did she get that from? Did she get it from the Titans? So the Titans got embarrassed that they didn't get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, so they felt the need to tell Diana, well, that's okay. We're going to go get Justin Simmons instead. So I question that reporting. I'm like, wait a minute, where's that come from? But the second thing about Justin Simmons is this, and I started noticing this last week when we put the free agent plan together. And we all know the Titans have to add a safety. And I looked at all the available free agent safeties that were out there, and I knew Xavier McKinney was going to get a freaking bag because Pro Football Focus said that he was the best free agent safety by far. And he's young and uninjured. So I knew he was going to get a bag, and he did from the Green Bay Packers. Other than that, there were a bunch of veteran safeties that have been released lately. Of course, we know about Kevin Byard, and then on top of it, there was Jordan Poyer, and there was Justin Simmons, and there's a bunch of different guys. And I was surprised when I looked up Simmons' numbers where they sat amongst that group, because I just remember the Justin Simmons that intercepted Mariota in that unfortunate finale for him in 2019. And I always remember Justin Simmons being good, but I don't watch the Denver Broncos every week, so I just assumed that Simmons was good. The Pro Football Focus grades tell another story. The Pro Football Focus grades say that he's okay, but he has declined each of the last 3 years. In 2019, Justin Simmons had a grade of 90.7, which is awesome. In 2021, he was 74.8. 2022, he was 70.7. And last year, he was 67.9. As they got away from Vic Fangio, as they lost veterans like Von Miller, Justin Simmons wasn't as good. And so then I compared him to Kevin Byard, because all I've ever heard from you guys, as soon as the Titans trade Kevin Byard, as soon as they traded him, all I heard from you guys was that Byard was regressing. Byard wasn't good anymore. You didn't want Byard out there. Byard sucked. I heard all of it. I know. Over the last 3 years, Kevin Byard has a higher grade than Justin Simmons. Byard has a Pro Football Focus grade over the last 3 years of 81.2. Simmons, 71.1. That's a big difference. Even last year, Byard 74.0, Simmons 67.9. When it comes to receptions, Simmons over the last 3 years has allowed 71.3% of targets to receptions. Byard 69%. So Byard has been better there than Justin Simmons. And in pass breakups, Simmons has more over the last 3 years at 4.3 a season to Byard's 3, but that includes 7 that Simmons had in 2021, which was 3 years ago. So as much as I like the name Justin Simmons, you're not actually getting better. Now, I don't know what the money is going to come in at when it comes to Justin Simmons. Is that a $6 million like what Amani Hooker's making or what Tyrann Mathieu made? Is that an $8 million? I saw $11 million for C.J. Gardner-Johnson last night, and I'm like, why would you pay $11 million for C.J. Gardner-Johnson? But I think the Eagles need they need him for the identity, the leadership, the green dot, the way they need to get back to how they did things. And he was on that Super Bowl team. I'm still not a fan of the move, by the way. And if they had paid C.J. Gardner-Johnson all that money here, I would have gone nuts. I would have gone crazy. But there's really not any metric, at least according to Pro Football Focus, and I'm not going to go back and watch all these Bronco games. There's no metric that says that Simmons is better than Byard. And that kind of, again, they need a safety, but that disappoints me. Now, on the Jerome Baker front, and again, he's coming in for a visit. I like Jerome Baker. I really like Jerome Baker. He was part of the Stillman and Company free agent plan. He is better than Azeez. I did the same kind of comparison for Baker and Azeez. When it comes to Azeez, now, again, Azeez only played 300 snaps in 2022. But when it comes for the two of them, Baker grades higher than Azeez. Baker is a better tackler than Azeez. And Azeez is making $11 million a year, and I don't think at this point in free agency, I don't think that money is going to be available to Jerome Baker. Now, he did suffer through injuries last year. I think he played 13 games, but he is a playmaker at middle linebacker. I think getting Jerome Baker would be like getting David Long Jr. And Jerome Baker is a green dot guy, and they need a green dot guy because it's not going to be Kenneth Murray. And it sounds like Kenneth Murray has the raw potential to be a good player. He just needs to be coached and needs to be focused and things like that. Well, that guy can't be your green dot guy. So when I saw Jerome Baker still on the board, I held out hope even after they signed Murray. And when I woke up this morning and I saw Adam Schefter tweet out that the Titans were bringing Jerome Baker in for a visit, I said, yes! And I hope that the physical checks out, because I'm sure that's why they're bringing him in. The two guys it's been reported that they're bringing in for visits, Chase Young, I think that's the personality thing. The guy has a reputation for being a loser, for being uncoachable and not playing hard in the NFC Championship game. That's a red flag. So I think they want to examine that. And with Baker, I think it is, hey man, we're going to need you to be the leader of the defense. We're going to need you to call the defense, and we need to make sure you're healthy. And if he is healthy, everything I know of Jerome Baker, I love. I am a huge Jerome Baker fan. So I'm hoping they lock that one up. 615-737-1025 is our phone numbers. Those are the two players the Titans are bringing in, or at least targeting. And again, with the Diana report, I don't know what that means. They're targeting Justin Simmons, so, what does that mean? 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones. We'll continue next here on Stillman and Company. And there is one position that the Titans have, at least so far, neglected that is going to be a problem if they don't get something done soon. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company here on our program. The NCAA tournament is right around the corner, and it's time for you to sign up and play the official 102.5 The Game Bracket Challenge, brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, Twin Peaks, and Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Go to thegamenashville.com/bracket challenge or the 102.5 The Game Nashville app and sign up to play for your chance to win 4-day passes to Bonnaroo. Holy crap, that's a good present. Brackets will open after the teams have been selected on Sunday. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. am convinced after talking to you that right tackle is not a need for the Titans. If we were the Titans and we were talking about this, would we look at right tackle as a need, or would we say, okay, let's go with Petit Frere or let's go with Radens and go from there?
It's not a desperate need, not anymore if they get Joe Alt or somebody like that at left tackle. Keep in mind, they could draft a right tackle. I mean, J.C. Latham, the right tackle out of Alabama, is moving up the draft boards. A lot of people have him mocked to the Chargers just above the Titans. And even though he's a right tackle, they may end up taking him anyhow and solidify that position and get some chewing gum and MacGyvering to fix left tackle for a while. But right tackle to me is not a desperate position. To me, defensive line is more of a desperate position right now, because, you know, they're going to need some young guys to roll in the rotation, or else that defense is just going to get exhausted by the fourth quarter and the offense is going to be in desperate throwing mode all the time.
Boy, Trevor said that yesterday, because I have bitched and bitched and bitched about the offensive line, and I heard Trevor say that, and I was like, oh my God, he's right. Here is the Titans' defensive line as of right now. Jeffrey Simmons, T.K. McClendon, Quentin Bohanna, and some guy whose last name is Coburn. That is the defensive line. They need more bodies. Like, they need players. And I look at the Texans, meanwhile, and I know there's a probably third of the Titans fan base that thinks that it's just ridiculous to sit there and talk about the Texans like, oh, how dare you compare us to the Texans, Jared? I mean, other than the fact that you compete against the Texans, you play in the same division as the Texans, you operate by the same rules as the Texans, and they were worse than you were 2 years ago. Other than that, I guess it's unfair to completely compare you to the Texans. But you don't have anybody. And so Josina Anderson put the rumor out there on Monday that the Titans were in the mix for DJ Reader, and we have not ever since then. I mean, Ian, I don't know about you. I don't think we've heard an update on DJ Reader.
Don't think so.
I mean, what are we doing? Like, there's a fine line here when it comes to, well, Jared, there's still Johnny and Jimmy and Scotty and Stevie, and they're all out there, and we can sign all of them, or we can sign one of them, Jared. It'll be okay. In this case, there's Eric Armstead, and there's DJ Reader. And again, Reader has the connection from Cincinnati with Brian Callahan, and Armstead has the connection from San Francisco with Rand Carthon. But until they actually sign one of those guys, I'm nervous. Because as we all know, these games are won up front, and Jeffrey Simmons can't do it by himself. They tried that in 2020. It was Simmons and Landry and a whole bunch of nothing. Remember, I think it was Daquan Jones and Jack Crawford that joined them up front. That's not good enough. And even Arden Key, like, I'm a little nervous when it comes to him. Landry, I think, will be back. They'll, be back to being Landry 100%. But I'm nervous about that defensive line. And I agree with Trevor. I think that there's a defensive line. When that's what you've got, Simmons and a bunch of nobodies, that quarterback's going to sit back there and just pat the ball, pat the ball, pat the ball, pat the ball. Meanwhile, DeMeco Ryans, and you can't tell me that this is some kind of Rand Carthon San Francisco plan, because DeMeco Ryans in Houston is loading up on the defensive line. And I do think today, they traded Malik Collins to the 49ers for nothing. And I think they did that so you can't get Malik Collins. Because I would have gotten Malik Collins. If they had released Malik Collins, I would have pounced on Malik Collins. Let's go to Brandon, who's up next here on Stillman and Company. Thank you for calling. What's up, Brandon?
Seeing this free agency, I think the Titans are preparing to not compete next year. I think they still want to see what they have in Will Levis, and they're not spending the money because they don't know if Levis is the guy yet. And that's why they're not spending the money like Houston is.
But I don't understand. Like, Houston spent money last year when they didn't even know who their quarterback was going to be.
I think
Jacksonville spent money when Trevor Lawrence had that disastrous season under Urban Meyer, and people wondered if Trevor Lawrence could be the guy, and they went out and they signed Christian Kirk. They overpaid. They reset the market to sign Christian Kirk. They signed a guard that year and paid a boatload of money, and they signed a bunch on defense. They didn't wait around to decide whether or not Trevor Lawrence was good. Why should you wait around to decide whether or not Will Levis is good?
I mean, I think that's where it's headed.
I mean, that's fine. Brandon, thank you for your call. That's fine. And that may be the case. I have no idea what the Titans think. But if that is what they think, then they are incompetent. Then I was right, and they are. Because there's no way for Will Levis to get good if you don't put players around him. There's no way for you to even see what you have in Will Levis if you don't put good players around him. I mean, Derrick Henry is a Hall of Fame running back. And you saw what life for him was like when they took away A.J. Brown. If you don't put good players around the quarterback, how the hell are you going to decide whether or not Will Levis is good if he's throwing the ball to Nick Westbrook-Akine? That's why last year when there was all that trade talk about DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry, and I was like, no, you cannot take that away from the young quarterback. So, first of all, I disagree with the premise from the caller. I don't think that's what's happening. Secondly, Houston didn't do that. Houston did not know who they were picking with the second overall pick. They didn't know. They knew whoever they didn't draft. Between Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud, they were going to try to get. They thought they were going to take Will Anderson at number 2, and they were going to trade back in with Stroud, and then when word got out that you wanted Stroud, they decided, screw it, we're going to bite the bullet, we're going to take him. But that didn't stop them from spending in free agency last year. Dalton Schultz, Shaq Mason, Noah Brown, Robert Woods, Devin Singletary. I mean, Case Keenum. They brought in Case Keenum to be a mentor to a young quarterback. They spent. So I don't, you guys talk about whatever you want there about, they should wait until they find out if Levis is. There's no way to know if you don't get any good players around him. 615-737-1025. We're back to your phones. 615-737-1025. And the Titans did something yesterday. I was shocked. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
So I got around a lot of really, really smart people. And one of the classmates I had a PhD in neuroscience from the University of Minnesota. He had an advanced analytics degree from Oxford, and he helped design the AI technology for one of the top medical device companies in the country, where the AI was used to help the doctors identify cancer in patients. And I was just fascinated by this. And so I took what was a football problem and we put it in the context of AI. And one of the problems that we have in football is we spend a lot of money on players that don't pan out for injury. A lot of times they get injured and you end up paying for them injury settlements, or you end up cutting them once they get healthy. I was like, if we can reduce our pool there, if we can reduce our risk within that pool of players, I mean, that would be a game changer. If you can save an owner $1 million, $2 million off of one decision, I mean, that's a game changer. So I got with these guys, and we started to attack the problem. And to make a long story short, we were able to develop some models that seemed promising.
That was Chad Brinker on the Titans podcast. And I'm sorry, we got to play that cut as much as possible, because what that is somebody trying to sound incredibly smart who actually sounds stupid, right? Like, oh man, this guy, he's the head of neurology or whatever the hell it was. He's a big-time surgeon, and they used an AI model to be able to cure cancer and determine cancer in patients. And I said, let's bring that over to football, and we've brought that over to football models. And last night they signed Sadiq Charles for $2.5 million. Who the hell is Sadiq Charles? And I know you guys had that exact reaction when it happened. You know, when Diana Rossini tweeted out that, oh no, oh God, oh my God.
Did something just break?
Oh my God. This from Mike Garafolo. Breaking news. The Tennessee Titans have agreed to terms with former Steelers quarterback Mason Rudolph on a one-year deal worth up to $3.62 million.
Interesting backup.
He sucks. Oh, my God. Who's running this team? Like, I mean, Sadiq Charles and Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph. Now, look, I don't know. I've never met Mason Rudolph. I don't know about his personality, whether he's a good guy, bad guy, indifferent guy. I don't know. You know, and in order to do this job the right way, he's got to come in knowing that he's the backup. Like, he has to know that he's the backup when he shows up day one, and you know that he knows it. But one of the biggest parts that we've learned as far as all of this is concerned is in today's NFL, because you cannot practice the way that you used to practice. And you really can't practice at all in today's NFL. You know, it's a glorified walkthrough every day at practice. They don't wear pads anymore. They don't hit. They don't do two-a-days. They don't do anything. So because they don't do that, the offensive line play is so bad because it takes forever to develop an offensive lineman. Because the offensive line play is so bad, every quarterback gets hurt. That's why all these quarterbacks last year were getting hurt. So anytime, like the backup quarterback position for a guy who is as injury prone over the last 2 years as Will Levis is, behind what is still going to be an imperfect offensive line this year, has to be somebody that can play. Mason Rudolph cannot play. Mason Rudolph freaking sucks. And do you know how I know Mason Rudolph sucks? Because every time he's been given an opportunity, the Steelers cannot wait to get somebody else in there. So Mason Rudolph got the opportunity when Ben Roethlisberger hurt his elbow in 2019. And he was out for the year. And Mason Rudolph became the backup quarterback. And he sucked so bad that they could not wait to get to Duck Hodges, who's already retired from the NFL and was a 6th-round rookie, and he also stunk. And then Mason Rudolph sits on the bench behind Ben. Ben retires. They draft Kenny Pickett, and the Steelers think he sucks so bad that they signed Mitch Trubisky and made him the 3rd quarterback because, again, the Steelers, who know him, knows he sucks. Like, they know he sucks. So then Kenny Pickett goes out there and he gets hurt. Trubisky goes in there and he sucks, which we all knew was going to happen because he's terrible. And they put Mason Rudolph in at quarterback, and they don't lose every game. But that's a Tomlin thing. That's not a Mason Rudolph thing. And so then Mason Rudolph becomes a free agent. They say that they want a quarterback battle, and they don't even bring him back. They go get Russell Wilson. And Russell stinks. Play that Chad Brinker cut for me again. Did our AI model that detects cancer tell you to sign Mason Rudolph?
So I got around a lot of really, really smart people, and one of the classmates I had a PhD in neuroscience from the University of Minnesota. He had an advanced analytics degree from Oxford, and he helped design the AI technology for one of the top medical device companies in the country, where it was the AI was used to help the doctors identify cancer in patients. And I was just fascinated by this. And so I took what was a football problem and we put it in the context of AI. And one of the problems that we have in football is we spend a lot of money on players that don't pan out for injury. A lot of times they get injured and you end up paying for them injury settlements, or you end up cutting them once they get healthy. I was like, if we can reduce our pool there, if we can reduce our risk within that pool of players, I mean, that would be a game changer. If you can save an owner $1 million, $2 million off of one decision, I mean, that's a game changer. So I got with these guys, and we started to attack the problem. And to make a long story short, we were able to develop some models that seemed promising.
At my incredibly expensive fancy business school, where they learned how to use AI to cure cancer, we decided to bring that to the NFL to build up our models that tell us to sign Mason effing Rudolph. You have to be kidding me. You have to be kidding me. When there are other legitimate, veteran, successful, non-crappy quarterbacks that are out there. Mason freaking Rudolph. I mean, it's a joke. Like, it is, I mean, it is a joke. I mean, the whole key to this has to be cheap, right? Like, this is going on the cheap because it's a one-year deal up to $3.62 million. And Will Levis, who's been hurt multiple times in each of the last two seasons, including in college, is your starting quarterback. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is unacceptable. This is inexcusable. And I don't know if it's Rand Carthon, or I don't know if the owner is hoarding all the money and spending it on the stadium. I have no idea. But you can't do that. You can't say to me, we've got all the cap space, Jared. You try, give Rand another chance, Jared. We've got all the cap space. You can't do that and then go sign Mason freaking Rudolph. What a freaking joke. That's why Derrick Henry went on Bussin' with the Boys and is like, it's okay, Titans fans. It's not supposed to last forever. He's like, I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm not dealing with these morons. I mean, there are so many other things you could have told me that would not have pissed me off as much as this does. Let's go to your phones on this next. Again, the breaking news. Mike Garafolo reporting 6 minutes ago. The Titans have agreed to terms with former Steelers quarterback Mason Rudolph on a one-year deal worth up to $3.62 million. After 6 seasons, boy, this comes right from the agent, doesn't it? After 6 seasons with the Steelers that ended on a high note with solid play down the stretch, Rudolph gets a fresh start in Tennessee. Woof. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live, live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Barry Trotz will join us in 1 hour. Thank God, because then we can talk to a competent general manager who is not signing Mason Rudolph to be the backup quarterback. And Twitter's mad at me, Ian.
For what?
Because I'm crapping all over this Mason Rudolph signing.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the breaking news, the Titans have signed Mason Rudolph to a 1-year deal worth up to $3.6 whatever million it is, according to Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network. I hate this move. Backup quarterback is an important position for a couple of reasons. Number one, the backup has got to be the mentor to Will Levis. Just like Floyd told me Neil O'Donnell was very important to Steve McNair. As far as kind of like a caddy, somebody that's there for the young quarterback, that can show him the way, that can go through their experiences, and maybe Rudolph's great with that. I have no idea. That's the number one thing. The number two thing is that quarterbacks get hurt at an alarming rate nowadays, and thus the backup quarterback has to be able to play if you want to win any games with your backup quarterback in there. And so he can't be just some straight up crap bum, right? Like last year, the Texans signed Case Keenum to go behind C.J. Stroud and, in there with Davis Mills. And they did that because Keenum's had the experience. Keenum took a team to an NFC championship game. Mason Rudolph was the third string quarterback last year who got in there and won a couple of games down the stretch. But he's terrible, and he's always been terrible. And so Twitter's all mad. Somebody goes, Rand could sign Justin Jefferson, and I believe you'd find something negative to say. Ian, did I bitch about Lloyd Cushenberry?
No, I don't think so.
Did I bitch about Tony Pollard?
No, I don't think so.
Did I bitch about Chidobe Awuzie?
No, I don't think so.
I didn't complain about those players. No, I complain about the bad ones. And some people are like, chill out, Jared. We needed a backup. We need a backup. No, you signed a third-string quarterback is what you just did. A guy who the Steelers consistently dump, right? He was the backup. Ben got hurt. He had to go in. He stunk. He got benched. He was the third string. The second stringer, he was on the team, and they lost Ben Roethlisberger, and they were going to draft a quarterback, and they signed Mitch Trubisky because, they don't want anything to do with Mason Rudolph. Then when they realized Trubisky might actually be worse, they turned around and they put him in there, and then they let him just go. They didn't care about that. I mean, somebody else tweeted, Jared, let's waste $10 million on a veteran quarterback when the Titans have zero chance of winning a title next year. Let's get an expensive vet for no reason. No. Let's get an expensive veteran to show Will Levis the way. Somebody that actually has real league experience. Mason Rudolph has thrown 458 passes in his career. Neil O'Donnell, when he got to the Titans, had thrown 3,000 passes in his career. That Titans team was 8-8. Nobody thought they had a chance of winning a Super Bowl, and they ended up coming up 1 yard short. You guys just want to piss away next season like it doesn't matter. I mean, this is freaking ridiculous. So, no. I mean, I've got an injury-prone quarterback who I don't even know is the guy yet. I've got an injury-prone quarterback. My owner has been pumping up my cap space, and I need a veteran, solid backup quarterback, and I don't get Joe Flacco. I don't get a Jacoby Brissett. I don't get a Russell Wilson. I don't get a Ryan Tannehill. The Jets, I think the Jets are fine at quarterback unless he goes and decides to be, vice president on that third ticket with old Buddy. I mean, and they signed Tyrod Taylor. I can't have Tyrod Taylor. I can't even have Mac Jones. I can't have anybody. I get Mason freaking Rudolph. I mean, I'm sorry, but I get Mason Rudolph and Sadiq Charles. The Texans are adding Danielle Hunter, and I get Mason Rudolph and Sadiq Charles. Woo! Cap space! God. I mean, if I really had a choice, I'd root for another team. Like, I would. Okay. All right. Now we get a real signing, which I'm a little surprised by. This is from Ian Rappaport. Breaking news. The Titans are signing Jaguars star wide receiver Calvin Ridley. It says completing their free agency with a splash. Hold on. Completing? They're done? The 29-year-old Ridley gets a 4-year, $92 million contract with $50 million fully guaranteed on a contract. Okay, then he shouts out the agent. So, again, the agent is telling us 4 years, $92 million, $50 million guaranteed. That's what the agent is telling us. So, I mean, look, Mason Rudolph sucks, and I'm still not over that. But we turn our attention to a real signing that is not Sadiq Charles and is not Mason Rudolph, and that is Calvin Ridley. According to my notes, Calvin Ridley has character concerns, but the one thing that we should say about the character concerns with Calvin Ridley that is important to me is that he played in Jacksonville last year, and Nick Holtz is the offensive coordinator of the Titans, and he was the passing game coordinator last year in Jacksonville. So he's been around Calvin Ridley. Ridley played in all 17 games last year. He did not play in 2022 for a gambling suspension, and he played 5 games in 2021 due to mental health issues. There is a quarterback rating of 89.7 when he's targeted. He had 32 deep targets, so they will throw the ball down the field to Calvin Ridley. Now remember, Calvin Ridley dropped what probably was going to be a touchdown that either was going to put Jacksonville back in the game or give them the lead, or I can't remember, the details of what the score was when he dropped the ball that Trevor Lawrence put right in his hands. But that would have been a touchdown and probably would have put the Jags in the playoffs or at least gotten them a lot closer, and he dropped it, which I don't like. Now, he does have a 96.8 grade, according to Pro Football Focus, on deep throws. So when the quarterback lets it rip, it's pretty good. He's got a 113 quarterback rating when targeted deep. Only 30%, which is not the end of the world, but only 30% on contested catches, which, again, not great, but not bad. 7 drops last season. Now, is that because he's shaking off, the cobwebs of having not played for 2 years? I don't know. But, Ian, what was the contract total again?
92 with 50 guaranteed.
So 92 over 4, what does that come out to be?
Just about, what's that, 22? 23?
23, like so somewhere around there, and it's 50 guaranteed. So if it's 50 guaranteed, then it's pretty much a 2-year deal worth $25 million a season. What do we think? I mean...
Yeah, right at 23.
So, here are my thoughts on Ridley. First of all, I think the Titans probably overpaid a little bit, but I don't care about that. But if it's $23 million a year, and again, it's 50 guaranteed, so look at it again. And this is what's come from the agent, so I'm sure there are some more, there are some more elements to this. But it's probably a 2-year, $50 million contract. And then the Titans have options, and that would be his age 30 and 31 seasons. And then if he's good, you keep him, and if he's bad, you get rid of him. Ridley can run. That I will give him. Ridley can run. Ridley can run. And I think that's a good sign. By the way, remember how Paul Kaharski accused Rand Carthon of leaking to Ian Rappaport? Because Ian Rappaport went up to Paul last year at the Combine and was talking about how close he is with Rand. Rappaport just sent out a tweet. Quietly, Titans GM Rand Carthon and the team's brass have been lurking, and in a splash, they land Ridley. New coach Brian Callahan and quarterback Will Levis get a big-time weapon. It's like he had there's no news in that, but so be it. So, I will tell you this right now. The Ridley thing, it changes one very important element of the Titans. And we'll hit that next in your reaction. 615-737-1025, breaking news. The Titans have added Calvin Ridley, which does make me feel a lot better than I felt 10 minutes ago when they signed Sadiq Charles and Mason Rudolph. I'm still not angry about the Rudolph thing. But we've moved our attention to Ridley. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, breaking news. The Tennessee Titans have signed wide receiver Calvin Ridley from the Jacksonville Jaguars, 4 years, $92 million, $50 million fully guaranteed, according to his agent. So I have one other thought, and then we'll get to your phones at 615-737-1025. By the way, everybody on Twitter is like, what do you think of Rand now, Jared?
Let him cook. Let him cook.
I'm like, first of all, this doesn't change that I still hate the Mason Rudolph signing. Like, I want everybody out there to know this. I still hate the Mason Rudolph signing. And I have question marks surrounding Ridley. You know, number one is the age, and number two is the character concerns. But the Nick Holtz factor does make me feel better knowing that he was in Jacksonville with Ridley. And if Ridley was a red flag, then he would have said so, and they would have not signed him. Now, I'll tell you this. If Ridley goes off the reservation here, I'm firing Nick Holtz. Like, if I'm the owner and Ridley goes off the reservation after Nick Holtz gave us the thumbs up, I am telling Brian Callahan he is fired. Just like they probably told Mike Vrabel, Craig Aukerman, after those 2 punts got blocked, was fired. But I think that he probably had to give the thumbs up in order to make this a reality. Here's what I want. You know, Ridley is fast, and I'm fine with overpaying Ridley. And by the way, to the person in the last segment that was like, I think Rand could sign Justin Jefferson and you wouldn't like it. I don't have a problem with the Ridley signing. Ian, have I crapped on the Ridley signing?
Not yet.
Okay. He is fast. He is an outside guy. DeAndre Hopkins is an outside guy. So with the 38th pick, does this change the plans at 38? Does this change the plan? Because there's been a lot of talk about L'Jarius Sneed. And I didn't see how the Titans could add L'Jarius Sneed if they traded the 38th pick, which is what I think it would have taken in order to get L'Jarius Sneed. Well, now, because I just thought they're not going to trade 38 because they've got a wide receiver. They need a wide receiver with that pick. And I still think with Ridley at 30 years old, I still think they need to take a wide receiver. But I was wondering, well, maybe this now takes the place of that, and then they'll feel comfortable trading 38 in order to get L'Jarius Sneed. Now, again, I'm not the biggest Ridley fan, but he was the top guy on the market who could run. You know, again, I got in the argument with Chris Sanders about this when it came to, you know, Curtis Samuel or Tyler Boyd, and Chris Sanders was like, oh, no, you can play them outside. They can run. You can use them. I'm like, no, those guys are slots. Calvin Ridley is not a slot receiver. He is an outside guy. And again, 32 deep targets last season. And that is absolutely not shabby at all. Let's go to your phones as promised. 615-737-1025 here on our program if you want to weigh in. Gunnar asks, is this a better signing than Jacksonville's signing of Christian Kirk? I don't think it's a better signing because Christian Kirk's good. Because Kirk was younger, Kirk was probably faster, and Kirk wasn't suspended for an entire season and didn't miss pretty much the entire season the year before that with mental health reasons. That being said, I think this is the same thing. I think this is look at the receiver and who's the best receiver on the market. What does it take to get him? It takes $50 million guaranteed. Fine, done. $25 million a season. I mean, that is legit. Like, I don't have a problem with overpaying because, again, I think the cap's fake anyways. So I don't have a problem with overpaying. But I am, you know, again, I'm worried about the character thing. And if your offensive coordinator knows him, then that should ease my character concerns. One texter says, as far as the Titans are concerned, David in Arkansas says Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins, and if Burks could get back on track with his talent, that could be a great group of wide receivers. It's almost certain the Titans go left tackle in the draft, and they will need protection to get the ball to those wide receivers. I thought it was certain the Titans were going left tackle in the draft anyway, but now it's probably guaranteed that that 7th pick will be used in some form of another in order for the Titans to be able to get their left tackle. So I like that. Now, I do wonder, does this take them out on defense? Oh, we got more breaking news. Tom Pelissero reports that the Titans are signing veteran kicker Nick Folk to a 1-year, $3.75 million contract with a max of $4.13 per with incentives. A big deal for the NFL's most accurate kicker, $3.75 for Nick Folk. It might be a little too much, but again, I don't care. I think the cap's fake anyways. So as far as the kicker, is concerned. That's taken care of. I hope the incentives are extra point related, because over the last 2 years, Nick Folk has done fine kicking the ball, but those extra points, been a little bit of a problem for him. But again, we'll get to that later, whatever. Nick Folk's fine. Ridley, I do think, changes not only the Snead conversation, but he also changes the 38th pick conversation, whether you use that for a trade of L'Jarius Snead or whether you use that, which I thought was for sure going to be a wide receiver. Now it could be a defensive player. And I don't know what the expectation of the defensive players in this draft is, but I absolutely think that that could all be in play. I mean, these people, Austin from Clarksville says, Tavondre Sweat at 38. Who the hell's that? Am I supposed to know who that is? Do you know who that is, Ian?
I do not. At pick 38? No.
Cameron says 4 years for a 30-year-old wide receiver. Look, man, they ain't all perfect on the free agent market. Like, that's how there is no unblemished player on the free agent market. The old man used to say, guys are only available for one of 4 reasons: bad player, bad guy, too much money, injured. In the case of Ridley, we have bad guy concerns and maybe too much money concerns. I'm a little surprised that Jacksonville, didn't. And I'm sure there was a bidding war for Ridley, for sure. I'm a little surprised that Jacksonville didn't find a way to keep him, even if that meant working out a deal with Atlanta. And that makes me a little concerned. But again, I'm not that concerned because, again, your offensive coordinator was their passing game coordinator. Fitz joins us next. His reaction. We'll get right to it on his thoughts on Calvin Ridley and what it means for the 38th pick, what it means for L'Jarius Snead, what it means for Will Levis, and the other free agent signings as well. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. That's right. I love FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is putting the ball in your court for the rest of the NBA season because right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Bet on the NBA's wide range of bets like quick bets, live same-game parlays, player props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/JGM and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. That's right. Everybody's got to love FanDuel, and it's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. There you go. 21 and over in present Tennessee. First online real money wager. Only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Stillman and Company here on the program. Again, the breaking news, the Tennessee Titans have signed Calvin Ridley to a 4-year contract, $92 million, $50 million guaranteed. The way I look at it is it's a 2-year contract worth $25 million a year. Because if it's $50 million guaranteed as reported, then that means that you're paying $50 million if he plays for you for 2 years. So it's basically a 2-year, $50 million contract with, again, those options over the next couple of years. Now, somebody texted me and they said, I just got in the car. I wanted to know kind of your Calvin Ridley initial reaction to that. My initial reaction, again, is my biggest concerns with Calvin Ridley are the character issues, whether it was the gambling suspension or, and again, I don't think mental health is a character issue, but it is a concern. Like it's an injury, I guess, like other injuries about, hey, is his headspace in the right place if we're going to make a $50 million commitment for this guy? And I'm okay. I'm fine with it because Nick Holtz is the is the offensive coordinator of the Titans. He was the passing game coordinator last year in Jacksonville, which means he was around Ridley. So if Ridley was a good guy, if Ridley's a good teammate, if Ridley is somebody that you can count on, which for $50 million over 2 years, that should be somebody you can count on, he would know. So that's my biggest thing. My biggest concern with Ridley are his hands. Because I know he can run. I know he can run deep. I know he can catch it deep. And I know he'll play all 17 games because that is if he's, not gambling. 17 games in 2023. So that meant that he stayed healthy. 7 drops last year. That's Chigaconquo territory. And so, that's the only concern that I have is him catching the ball. It did kind of hit me, though, for a second, Ian, that the $25 million, that's how much A.J. Brown makes.
Yeah. Well, Ridley makes 23.
Yeah, but when it's 50 guaranteed.
By 2.
Like, that's a 2-year, $50 million contract. And then the rest are just options.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing about free agency is you're always going to overpay. You overpaid Lloyd Cushenberry. You overpaid, you really didn't overpay Tony Pollard. You probably paid Tony Pollard about what he's worth. But you overpaid Lloyd Cushenberry because you're going to overpay in free agency. And somebody tweeted me and they said, see, this is what tells you all about how the league feels about Will Levis. I guess they like Will Levis. I guess that's kind of the sentiment here, that they like Will Levis because, if they're going to sign with the Titans, they must like him. Dude, they didn't sign with the Titans. Ridley didn't sign with the Titans for Will Levis. Ian, why'd he sign?
Oh, the money.
The money. Like, that's why he signed. Just like Christian Kirk didn't sign to go to Jacksonville to play with Trevor Lawrence. He signed for the money. He would have gone to Siberia for the kind of money that he was offered. Neil texts in and says, why is Calvin Ridley considered a quote-unquote bad guy? So Calvin Ridley missed the entire 2022 season because in 2021, the NFL found out that he was placing, it was legal for you and me, but it's not legal for an NFL player to bet on the NFL, and they suspended him for a year. Do you guys not remember that? Because, remember how, I forget who it was, Von Miller maybe, somebody else got a domestic violence issue, and it was like, so that's only 6 games, but Calvin Ridley's the whole season. And I'm like, that's not an apples-to-apples comparison. So Ridley got popped for the entire year. Jacksonville traded a 3rd-round pick to Atlanta in order to get Ridley, which, again, was probably in large part because they were desperate for receivers the same way they paid Kirk all that money. And he had to miss the entire 2022 season. And then again, and I don't know I don't know, I wasn't there, and my guess is even if you covered the team, you still probably don't know the reality of what happened as far as the 5 games in 2021 and then leaving the team, and citing mental health as the reason. There's no way to know what's what unless you're there. And so that's why I feel comfortable with Nick Holtz as the offensive coordinator of the Titans, who is in Jacksonville, that he will know one way or another. Lamar says, have the Titans ever taken a player from Jacksonville and that player ever been good? Ian, look that up, says Lamar. I'm not going to ask you to look that up, Ian. I'm trying to think off the top of my head who's come from Jacksonville. Now, I believe Eddie Robinson, and I will ask you to look this up, Ian. I believe the linebacker Eddie Robinson came from Jacksonville. Now, he was with the Oilers, and then he went to Jacksonville.
That is correct.
Thank you. Bang, bang.
Houston, Jacksonville for 2 seasons, and then to Tennessee in 98.
Bang, bang, baby. Got that one right. That counts. Does that count?
Sure.
That counts. I'll take it. By the way, they've got this thing on Football Reference and Baseball Reference called the Immaculate Grid thing. I've become addicted to it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
They're tricky.
I mean, you got to know your stuff. Like, I try hockey. I'm like, I don't know who played for the Calgary Flames, but, like, I'm addicted to that stuff. So I'm trying to think, is there anybody else? Like Jonathan Cyprian, no, because he was kind of TD says Arden Key. Arden had a good season.
Yeah, that's not a bad one.
I mean, Eddie Robinson, to me, I remember talking to Floyd about this during the COVID shutdowns because nobody wore like Eddie Robinson jerseys at the stadium or anything like that, but he was a really good player. And Floyd was like, well, look, I don't know what the fans were saying, but inside the building, he was the man. And I'm like, that's how I felt about Danico Autry, which was nobody's wearing a Danico Autry jersey to the game, but like I think we can all agree that Danico Autry was the man. Hold on, let's see this. Bobby Wagner signing with the Commanders. 1-year deal worth $8.5 million. Again, I'm still on the Jerome Baker train. I do wonder where that's going. Like, I do wonder where that would be. Benjamin says A.J. Brown would make more than $25 million a year if he signed a contract in free agency today. Bingo. I'm just telling you the reality that, again, Ridley, and it's technically 23, but it's really 25 over 2 years. Ridley's making A.J. Brown money. Oh, TD said that his facepalm in the Arden Key text was because he wasn't being serious about that. Arden Key had a good season. If I could find somebody better, I would. But 3 years, $70 million for Michael Pittman. What's that? $70 million per year? What is that? Over 3 years. 23 and a third?
Yep.
Okay.
So pretty much the same.
Brian says, I'd 100% trade the 38th pick and Kyle Phillips for L'Jarius Sneed now. You don't need Kyle Phillips in that trade, and I don't think they want Kyle Phillips in that trade. I do wonder this, though. I do wonder what this means for Burks, because I don't think the Titans are out as far as the draft is concerned with the wide receiver market, because Brian Callahan got up there at the Combine. Now, he could have been lying through his ass. I don't know. But he got up there at the Combine, and he talked about how there are going to be good receivers in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. And he said, hopefully we can get a couple of those guys. Well, right now, DeAndre Hopkins is going to start. Calvin Ridley's going to start. Burks is not a slot receiver, though in theory you could put Burks outside and move DeAndre into the slot if you wanted to. But if you draft another receiver, then where is Burks on the depth chart? And Burks doesn't play special teams. So could this be a scenario where, to Brian Callahan's point, he thinks there's going to be receivers in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, and then you take Treylon Burks to the market and you get a 6th round pick or something like that in return for Treylon Burks. And that could be that way, that could not be that way. One texter says, Jared, do you think this is turning out to be the 2008 Titans free agency class with Nick Harper, Chris Hope, David Thornton, and Kerry Collins? So it was 2006 is what you're talking about. Collins was kind of a late addition. To me, the big one you missed was Kevin Mawai. He was kind of the leader that brought that offensive line together, and I do think Lloyd Cushenberry could be that guy. You also forgot David Givens, the wide receiver the Titans paid a boatload of money to, who I think caught like 3 passes for the Titans. I don't know. Like, I think it's too early to get excited about that. Again, I love the Cushenberry sign. Pollard I'm on board with. Ridley I'm on board with. Awuzie I'm on board with. I like. That's fine. Kenneth Murray, Pro Football Focus says he stinks, but who knows? Sadiq Charles, Mason Rudolph, out, no. No. And then the really thing I'm cool with. 615-737-1025. Let's get to your phones, and we'll do more of them. 615-737-1025. And then there is the question about L'Jarius Sneed, which I think is a fair question to ask. Let's talk about Twice Daily. That's right. I love Twice Daily, and Twice Daily has your cravings. Try their new wraps: Italian, ham and cheddar, turkey and Swiss, Nashville, hot chicken, you name it. They're made to order with your favorite toppings. You can download the Twice Daily app to order ahead, and of course, they've got snacks at Twice Daily as well. They've got your favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, and more, and pretzels. Salted, garlic, parmesan, cinnamon, sugar, you name it. They're available now through the made-to-order kiosk, and you can download the Twice Daily app and join the loyalty program to unlock special discount savings, more, and, of course, order ahead. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, fresh all day.
For Tennessee, you already had a chance to get off the field, but the pass interference gives Jacksonville another chance. Again, they like to run corner routes to the short side of the field where Jones and Ingram are.
Lawrence back in the end zone. Ridley over the shoulder kicks. Touchdown. Control. Right foot, left foot. Ridley surgical in the back corner of the end zone.
A beautiful throw, and this is a mismatch. You got Hooker playing inside. Ridley to the wide side of the field can just run away from Hooker, but that isn't possible without a perfect ball from the quarterback, and Lawrence gives him that.
There you go. That was when the Titans went to Jacksonville and they lined up Amani Hooker on Calvin Ridley, when now they're teammates, at least for right now. I do have a question off the top of my head. Barry Trotz will join us in 10 minutes, so we're going to roll through some of your phones. But I do wonder a couple things. Number one, I wonder if this now opens up the 38th pick for L'Jarius Sneed. But then I wonder, do they actually have the cash to be able to pay L'Jarius Sneed? I also wonder if the Titans have the cash to be able to fill the holes on defense, because they need defensive line help. Trevor said that's bigger than offensive line. And I also wonder, does this mean that the Titans are for sure locked in with Chig at tight end and trying out Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, at right tackle, which I don't need to tell the right tackle story here. You know, that I just, oof. But it is what it is. And so if you ask me, do you like the Calvin Ridley signing? My answer to that is they had to get Levis his own Christian Kirk. And that's what Ridley is. And then again, on the character issues with Ridley, one of his coaches in Jacksonville is your offensive coordinator. Chad says, give Tyler Boyd 2 years and be done with wide receiver other than a late-round guy. Give yourself more flexibility. I disagree. If this is a great receiver draft, you need to pick a receiver, because Ridley's 30 and DeAndre's not going to be out there for forever. So I think you do need a young receiver in the pipeline, even if now it's not as immediate of a need, which I do wonder what they're going to do on the defensive line, and I wonder what they're going to do with that other corner spot. Texter says, what are we expecting out of Ridley? Robert Woods numbers or A.J. Brown numbers? I'd say somewhere in between. I mean, I think that DeAndre is going to be the favorite target. Second down and 8, they're going to find DeAndre. But I think they're going to run the ball a lot this year with Tony Pollard. I know that one quote that Brian Callahan said about the team that passes the ball the best wins. I know that is legit. But you got to take baby steps, and running the football is always important for a young quarterback. So I think they're going to run the ball a lot, and I think Tony Pollard is going to be the primary running back. Now, Spears will get his carries, and they'll interchange them, but if you talk about pounding the rock, I think that's going to be Tony Pollard. And so let's say Tony Pollard rips off 7 yards on first down. Then I think you're going to see the deep shots to Ridley. I think Ridley's going to be the big explosive guy, and I think the other guy, Hopkins, is going to be the more consistent, Levis just constantly playing pepper with him. The other thing into the equation with Chig, and I don't like doing this because when I do this, I feel like it gets fans maybe a little excited. Like, I think it gets fans. It's using hope as a strategy, or hope as an expectation, which I don't do. Optimism as an expectation, which I don't do. In Chig's rookie year, he was explosive. He had, in the NFL, the second most yards per route behind Tyreek Hill. And I really thought Chig could be an every down tight end, and he looked that way in training camp, and I bought the Kool-Aid, and it just really wasn't, in my opinion, he's just not a starting tight end. That's just me. Brian Callahan says otherwise. But Chig does have the athleticism, if he could ever catch the ball. Chig does have the athleticism to be a big play tight end. And I do wonder with Ridley and with Pollard and with Spears if Chig could be featured kind of in for some of those big plays, especially now that you have a better offensive coach. One texter says, Jared, do you think that there's anything to the fact that this didn't get leaked? Just think of how Rand couldn't stop talking and they missed out on C.J. Stroud or C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They probably won't get Simmons or Snead because those leaked. I mean, I think there was always talk, wasn't there, about the Titans having interest in Calvin Ridley? I just never thought that it was going to come to pass because I thought the Patriots were going to pay through the ass.
It sounded like the Titans were almost like the third team in that.
Yeah, behind, what, New England and Jacksonville?
Yeah.
And so I think that there's Peter Schrager says, always look for connective tissue on surprise signings like Calvin Ridley and the Titans. Titans' new offensive coordinator, Nick Holtz, coached Calvin Ridley last year in Jacksonville, and the two had a great relationship. Hey, you weren't surprised by that if you listened to this show. That's right. One texter says, could the Titans trade down and find their way into an extra second or third? So here's the problem with Snead. Like, let's say the Titans want Snead, but they want to deal a third and they don't have a third. You'd almost have to wait until the draft to be able to do it. And I don't know that Kansas City's going to wait that long. But if you waited until the draft, you probably could. Because, again, I'm still not ruling out wide receiver as a possible position the Titans could draft, even with the addition of Ridley. And that means neither can Atlanta. And the difference between 7 and 8 is a third-round pick. So if you can convince Atlanta that you might take a Dunze or Neighbors if they're there, you can move back with Atlanta, still take your left tackle at 8, pick up the third, turn it around for L'Jarius Sneed. Just a possibility, but you can't bank on it because you don't know who's going to be there when you're on the clock at 7, and you can't make a decision as to what Atlanta is going to be willing to do or not do. Maybe Atlanta doesn't want a Dunze or Neighbors. Texture says the Titans should sign Eric Armstead and the linebacker coming in tomorrow, and then switch in the second round and a fifth for L'Jarius Sneed. So the guy on defense, I want DJ Reader on the defensive line, and I want Jerome Baker, who I think Terrell is referring to, the linebacker coming in tomorrow. I want Jerome Baker. I love Jerome Baker. So that, I absolutely green dot guy. And he's got to stay healthy, which he didn't this year, but he was good at that last year. Totally fine. I think he's a better player than Azeez. And if they can get those two done, if they can get DJ Reader and Jerome Baker, then I think they just need a little bit more depth on the defensive line, another corner, and whatever it takes to not have Nicholas Petit-Frere at right tackle. And then I'll feel good about the team. And then we'll see if Will Levis can be the guy. Barry Trotz will join us next. Predators in Winnipeg tonight. Post-trade deadline, how does the team feel? What are we thinking? We'll do that coming up next. FanDuel Sportsbook's my official sportsbook app. That's right. Bet the NBA with a no-sweat same-game parlay from FanDuel every Thursday with TNT Thursdays. It doesn't matter if you're new to FanDuel or if you already have an account. You'll get bonus bets back if your same-game parlay doesn't win on any NBA on TNT game. NBA same-game parlays are the perfect way to combine your bets for a chance to score a bigger payday. So when you've got Kenny, Chuck, Shaq, Ernie, you can go ahead and bet the same game parlays with TNT. However you want to play, go to FanDuel.com/JGM to bet the NBA with a no-sweat same-game parlay from TNT on TNT Thursdays. That's FanDuel.com/JGM. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 and over and present. Tennessee minimum 3-leg parlay required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line 1-800-889-9789. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Ian, we have a statement from Calvin Ridley.
Cool.
Who has just signed with the Titans for $92 million. Chestnut checkers, love all, Ridley. What's that mean? You don't seem to have much of an idea. Neither do I. Anywho, with that, the Predators are in Winnipeg red hot as they hit the road. They win on Saturday. They lose in overtime in what was a gutsy decision by John Hines on Sunday, but now they're taking on Winnipeg. This has some playoff preview vibes, especially now that we are post-trade deadline. We know what the rosters are going to be, and Predators general manager Barry Trotz joins us, presented by Gary Force Acura. So, Barry, I want to start with this. How exciting is it? How relaxing has it been to know that the trade deadline is now past you, and how quiet has your phone been?
It is quite a transformation from probably the 3 weeks before the trade deadline to the basically the minute after the trade deadline. It is totally a 360 from that standpoint, but I'll take it at this point.
Barry, let's start with the new additions. You know, Jason Zucker got into the two games over the weekend, and Anthony Beauvillier got into the two games and played over the weekend. What did you think of them early on? And now that they've been with the team for the road trip and then practice and now the road trip and the meetings and everything else, what do you think about their assimilation into the group?
Well, I think, the first thing that you want them to assimilate in the group, just as humans, it's difficult, coming to a new team, new players in the locker room, how things are done, just trying to fit in is probably the number one thing. And I think both of them have great personalities. They're going to fit in great with our guys, especially with the leadership group that we do have. I think they'll fit in seamlessly that way. In their game, you can tell that this is a lot of stuff that we do as a hockey team is foreign to them. You could see them thinking rather than just reacting. But that will come. That will come with reps and game time and seeing, even teammates playing, understanding that you can flood certain zones. You can go and support a little quicker. Is it? We talk about our defense having possession or full possession will trigger your decision on how far you may push out in the zone or come across and support. So all that will come in time. You could tell if it was systematically with those guys in the first couple games, I would say they probably would be. I would consider that very average, but that's not an indictment or anything. It's just the process that they have to go through. But I know both these guys, once they get everything down, they start reacting rather than thinking. They'll be fine. They'll be really good ads for us.
Barry, I found it fascinating that Andrew Burnett decided to put them on the same line with Colton Sissons, a very experienced veteran, and kind of keeping the younger guys with Jankowski and Evangelista and those guys together. What was it about Sissons that kind of made him the guy that they said, okay, let's bring these two new guys in and let's put them with Colton Sissons at the very beginning, knowing that it was a shotgun marriage given the whole timing of them arriving and joining the team?
Well, I thought it was a wise decision on Andrew's part because of the fact you got two new guys who haven't played the system that we play. You put them with probably the most stabilizing centerman that we have and let them learn together. Anthony and Zuck on the same line, learning together with Colton. They play, and you all you did was basically sort of move the one line and allowed them to try to learn together, and the other three lines weren't disrupted at all. So I thought it was a wise decision on his part, and I think it'll pay dividends for us in the future.
Cody Glass has the hat trick. Barry Trotz is with us, presented by Gary Force Acura. He has the hat trick against Colorado, which he really needed, from a scoring standpoint. And then he kind of got banged around in the two games at home physically. And he gets taken out of the lineup over the weekend with the two new guys coming in. And I wonder, in the discussions of with two new guys and one guy, Trennan, going out, in the discussions about who would go out, how much of that was about either we've seen kind of the scratching resets that Coach Burnett's used, and how much of it was Cody Glass got banged around a little at home last week, and he probably could use the time off from the hits and everything else to recover?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. I think, he got banged around a little bit, and this time of year you're going to get banged around a little bit, and you're going to get marked up. And I just thought it was just the timing-wise, it was probably a perfect situation where both the new guys come in and you allow Cody to have a little break to heal up, and at the same time, there's an accountability to, I think, Cody when he gets banged up. It's hard for players to play at the level that they can, and a lot of guys play at some of the veteran guys, like their guy like Roman Yossi's been banged up many times in his career and finds ways to contribute. But those are the elite players. A lot of the players that are, I'll say, just trying to find their own game, when they get marked up, a lot of times it's hard for them to keep that standard that allowed them to be successful. So I think Cody's going through that. He understands that we've got some new people in as well. So if we're going to go down the stretch, the last 16 games are going to be really hard. They're going to be physical. This is going to be you better put your big boy pants on tonight against Winnipeg Jets, because they're the real deal. I mean, I look at them, Colorado, they're right there with Dallas. But this team can be big and nasty and physical, as well as have just a really high end, a group of forwards and a deep set of forwards. So they just keep coming at you. So we're going to have to go four lines. We're going to have to put our big boy pants on tonight and be ready to go.
Do you look at tonight as kind of a playoff measuring stick game? I know we talked last week about how that Colorado win gave you guys confidence approaching the deadline. And we saw Colorado after that game kind of shake up their roster ahead of the trade deadline. Now, the trade deadline's come and gone, but this very much could be a playoff series, playoff preview. Do you look at it as kind of a measuring stick of where you stand up against a potential playoff opponent if you guys make it? Yeah,
a little bit, but I wouldn't put everything into this game because I've been on both situations over a course of time when you've had a team that, they come in and say it doesn't go well for us tonight, we have a real rocky night. It's also a great trigger for your team to go, okay, we've got to dial it up another notch, and we got to do some things systematically where we can take some things out of their game as well. But if you have a real positive game, that can go a long way, just like that Colorado game, and say, you know what, hey, if we meet these guys, we're not going to be taking steps backward. We're going to try to push forward against these guys. So I think it works both ways. Any way you want to spin it, it can be used in a positive vein. But I expect us to show up. We've been showing up for, the last 12 games, and I expect us to show up tonight. I think the game's going to be won in the blue paint tonight. It's not going to be the goaltending. It's going to be the bodies in front of the blue paint. I think that's where the war is going to happen tonight.
Man, you sound like a football coach. You're getting all excited, run them in there, run through the little run out of the tunnel through the paper into the battle. Barry Trotz is with us here on the program. Speaking of the way you guys have played, there was a lot that was made about the standard. You've brought that up a bunch, right? Like, okay, yep. The team didn't meet the standard, and that's what led to the Vegas trip. Then the team was playing to the standard, and Andrew Burnett said on Tuesday and Thursday last week he didn't feel necessarily like they played to the standard, even though they got points in both games. Did you feel over the weekend in two high-intensive games at Columbus and Minnesota, did you feel like the team was playing to the standard?
I thought they slipped a little bit. I know this from coaching a long time is that I always say you go through 10 game segments. You can be really, really good for 10 games. Play to that standard night in and night out. Usually those 10 games are about a month. And then it's hard to sustain that level, especially unless you're a absolute really deep juggernaut type of team. It is hard to keep that standard. So what I always say is that those next 10 games, do you find ways to win games when you maybe didn't deserve it? Can you get a point when maybe you cut like we did the other night? We fell back in that game, but what happened? Our leadership group sort of grabbed the handle right there, said, "Hey, we got a power play late here. We can get this thing tied up and lo and behold, they got it done. So finding ways to get points, like we can look at that Minnesota game and say, hey, we lost the game. But I look at it the other way. We found a way to gain a point right at the end of the game. And, and I thought it was a really good strategic thing with John Hines pulling the goaltender. I mean, I haven't seen it that long. I have seen it, I think it was a couple of years back. I think LA did it on a face-off with about 3 seconds to go. In overtime, they pulled their goalie and they did a little of the Ovechkin play, and where he wins it straight back and he slaps it in. So I thought it was well calculated, and they executed on it. Good on them. I think that was a bold move. I think you can see the desperation in Minnesota's needing of points, and they made a good call, and they came through on it.
It's funny you brought that up. I was actually going to ask you about that because when I saw, because again, I don't know the rule book the way that you guys do, but when I saw them do that, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. You pull the goalie, and then that way you're not making it 50-50 against Saros in a shootout. And then when I found out on the TV broadcast that you lose the point, I was like, whoa, that was some freaking guts. And I mean, I know how coaches feel about a lot of things, which is, it's a good decision if it works. It's a bad decision if it doesn't. And that's how the media is going to treat it. And I don't necessarily subscribe to that. But for the life of me, Barry, for a couple days, I kept trying to wrestle with, was this the good strategic decision or not? Like, I don't even know.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, you could tell they had something on their bench they were going to do. If you just watch the benches, you can tell that there was something up. We were sort of prepared for it. We probably might not have been prepared for it for that long. We were thinking it might be the last 40 seconds or not a minute and 40. So we were sort of onto it, but we obviously we didn't get it done. But I it's something that's going to happen more and more. I think in the next coming years that coaches will be pulling their goaltender with 3-on-3, especially maybe with the last minute in a game when they need the extra points to try to catch up. So I think it'll be. I know in the KHL they do it a lot more, and I'm actually going to do a little ask our people, see if we can get some information on. A lot of teams are doing that more in the KHL. Overtime pulling their goaltender, feeling that if they get puck possession, they'll take their chance. So maybe we'll do a little study on it and see if it analytically makes sense. Years and years ago, when you're always taught, if the team pulls its goalie, don't shoot for the open net. Try to get it over the red line. Don't ice it. All that. Now analytics has shown us that you try for the open net. It's just a better percentage of winning hockey games. So we'll do a little, get our analytics people onto that and see if it makes some sense and give that information, whatever it may be, to our coaches.
Barry Trotz is with us. So we had talked maybe a couple months ago about the young guys that were coming into the season with, hoping that one or two of those guys maybe broke through and popped. And it seems like Luke Evangelista is starting, in my opinion, to take those steps. When you see the production, and not only the production, but the way he's playing the entire game, do you see, him maybe getting to that next step?
Yeah, absolutely. I see the things. You look back at Luke, he had a really good start. I think we were all excited. And then, like a lot of players who try to find their level in the National Hockey League, he sort of just flattened out. He was still a good player, but maybe not producing at the same rate. And then he started to doubt if he was going to produce anymore, and his game sort of started flattening out even more. I think Andrew wisely took him out for a game, talked to him, showed him some stuff that he wanted, and he popped him right back in, and Luke's been good ever since. I think Luke, in the areas of pace of game, his areas of his defense responsibilities, his all those things have sort of come full circle, and he is getting another level of confidence. On 2-on-1s, he's not necessarily always looking to pass. He's shooting the puck with authority. I think he's playing a really mature game for his age right now.
Barry Trotz is presented by Gary Force Acura. Barry, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the road with the team and the post-trade deadline. I won't say lull because you guys are still working, but the post-trade deadline not attached to your phone 24-hour mentality.
Yeah, we're going to call it a little bit of an exhale. That's what I'm going to call it.
There you go. Barry Trotz. Good luck tonight, Barry.
Thank you.
Yep, Barry Trotz joining us on the program, presented by Gary Force Acura. And so tonight, Barry said, get the big boy pants on against Winnipeg. Let me just say this. I don't have a hatred for Winnipeg. You know, that series, I thought that was a great seasonal rivalry in 2018, and that was a great series, and you just came out on the wrong side of it. But there's something about playing against them that I just dread because of how they play. Doesn't matter who the coach is. Doesn't matter who the players are. It just seems to be a Winnipeg thing. But Predators game day is next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Predators Game Day, brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. Now on Stillman and Company.
Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. TJ Anderson, my agent. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with TJ Anderson. As Barry Trotz said, it is a big boy matchup tonight. The Nashville Predators 37-25-4 on the road at the Winnipeg Jets 41-18-5. That's good for 87 points at the Canada Life Center, where they are having a hard time selling tickets in Winnipeg. And I never thought I would see the day. About last month, they had an article about how hard it's been to get tickets sold in Winnipeg. And they're like, man, we can't be like Vegas, Dallas, and Nashville. And I'm like, yes. But the important facts about tonight's game, 6:30 start time, so a little bit early. Max is up next with the pregame show. The Predators' playoff odds going into tonight. The Predators have an 86% chance of making the playoffs. Where they sit in the standings, they have the first wild card spot, 1 point ahead of Vegas. Vegas has a game in hand, so they have to keep up with that, and they are 7 ahead of Minnesota. So a win tonight would go a long way because, again, we're talking about padding with about 16, 17 games to go, whatever it may be. So that's important to note. Also, if the playoffs were to start today, the Predators would go on the road to Dallas, but Winnipeg has 3 games in hand on Dallas and is only 2 games back. So Winnipeg, in theory, could jump Dallas, and this could be a first-round matchup with the Preds and the Jets. So we will get you set with the pregame show. Max has you coming up next. Stillman and Company, it's been a wild show today. We'll see you all tomorrow at 2 o'clock.